Okay, welcome back to Echo Base, Simo's Vintage Toy Store. And today we're going to talk about a really interesting subject. I did mention it briefly in my previous video, but the controversy around Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship. And some people feel as if Obi-Wan abandoned Anakin at the lava pit after their epic duel in Revenge of the Sith. And, that decision to just walk away, leaving Anakin alive on the edge of the lava pit, burnt, damaged, angry, was a bit of a flaw for Obi-Wan. Like, he could have helped, at that point, helped Anakin. And then we mightn't have ended up with Darth Vader and all the happenings after that. So to help me discuss this today, we've got Miss Honey with us, who's a student of psychology and counselling. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk to her about her views on this issue, because I have discussed this with her. She has got some fairly controversial views about this towards Obi-Wan. And even before she was a student of psychology, I've spoken to her for a number of years about this. And I just thought it'd be really interesting to hear what she had to say about Obi-Wan and his relationship with Anakin. Now, thanks for joining us today, Miss Honey.
All good.
Now, you grew up watching the Star Wars movies, didn't you?
Yeah, but not religiously like you did. And I've really sort of, when I first met you, started like watching them a bit more closely and seriously.
Yes. And, okay, and I can remember you being very disturbed after we went and saw Revenge of the Sith.
Mm.
The child
Yep.
being brought into the world of the Jedi.
Yep.
Through Qui-Gon Jinn
Mm-hmm.
and young Padawan at the time, Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, young Anakin, there he is there, little Annie. I've got a little Annie figure here. He's so cute. He was such a nice kid.
Yeah.
And then...
And he had such a hard life, you know, and his...
on Anakin. It wasn't really touched on too much in the films. Do you think that was a factor in Anakin's early development?
I'm not sure about that one. I haven't really thought about it. What do you think?
Well, I think it might have been, because he kind of probably looked at Qui-Gon Jinn as being the big boss Jedi guy that got him involved in all this. And then to have him taken away so early on in his life might have had an effect. And then all of a sudden it's left to Obi-Wan to raise him as like now I leave you this kid to raise kind of thing on Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of pushed onto Obi-Wan. He didn't have much of a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that's an effect for Obi-Wan as well and his relationship with Anakin?
Well, I mean, these are really complex questions. And I think Obi-Wan, I mean, as a character, I mean, there's a lot of darkness there masquerading as light. It's a bit like, you know, the madness of the preacher you find on the street corner who's so convinced that you're right?
Yep.
They're so convinced that they've found the way, you know, they've found Jesus or whatever, and they think they're so filled with light, but really to the people passing by, they're quite mad and quite dark.
Yes.
And I see Obi-Wan that way. He lives the Jedi code to the letter, and I just think what happened with Anakin is he wasn't your typical Jedi, and he never was going to be. And Obi-Wan just saw him as a problem, and I think really he didn't expect him to survive. And I mean, you said he was burnt, he was left burnt and feeling bad. I think that's a bit of an understatement. He was pretty much all, you know, he should have been dead, and he died a pretty horrific death. And I think Obi-Wan was probably just very happy at that point. Maybe not like happy in the sense of delirious, but oh good, this problem's gone away.
Right. Okay. So you think that he was quite he wasn't like they tried to make out in the films that he was like, oh you were my brother, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Do you think?
I think that's all part of the darkness masquerading as light.
Well, one thing that got me with that line in the film was I always saw Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars and like more of a father figure rather than a brother. I thought that was a bit of a cop-out by Obi-Wan to say, we were brothers. Were they really? I thought they were more like father and son in a way.
He probably saw himself, he probably never wanted to see himself as Anakin's father, because then he knew there would be more responsibility to go along with that. If he could consider him a brother or an equal, like an older brother.
Yes.
It's just a little bit less of an attachment than a father.
Right. Okay. Well,
less responsibility.
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt about it at the time too. I must admit, I was like, a bit taken back by it because I was like, hang on, he's like your son, man. Okay. And what about the like other factors like Anakin's relationship with Padme, and how they had to keep it all under wraps, and hide that from Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan kind of knew anyway. What do you think about all that?
Well, I just think Anakin was never going to be your typical Jedi, and I think the Jedi had such a strict code, and it's part of the problem with the Jedi is it's a bit like having Catholic priests and they can't marry or have children or anything. Bad things are always going to come from stopping people and their natural urges.
Yes. And so you think that was a big factor?
Well, I just think it could have been dealt with very differently,
What about
communication is a big problem, obviously. If Anakin couldn't say, this is how I feel, this is how I want to live my life.
Well, do you think the Jedi's kind of set that kind of road for Anakin down that dark path because they wouldn't make him a member of the Jedi Council? So people like Mace Windu, Yoda, kind of pushed him towards Palpatine, who was going, well, hang on, you're the greatest of the Jedi, and they're giving you a hard run here.
Yeah, well, I think, it's a bit like when a group doesn't embrace difference,
Right.
You push, if you say someone is not the right fit for, it could happen just in any organisation or group in society. If someone doesn't fit how you want things to be, then yeah, sure, there's always a chance someone with more vision is going to snap them up and recognise their powers.
I think the Emperor just liked how you said vision there, because he often uses that saying, they lack vision.
Yeah, well, I'm not, I might not agree with the Emperor on most things, but he's certainly a little bit more open-minded than the Jedi.
Right, but see, let's get back to the story here. Do you think Obi-Wan acted in a way towards Anakin because he'd just seen him kill all those young Padawan learners on the footage from the Jedi Temple.
Yeah.
And Anakin just went in and killed them all, these kids.
Yeah.
Like, really, do you think, to Obi-Wan's defense, he's like, well, hang on a tick, this guy's a madman, I've got to deal with him.
Yeah, but I think the way he dealt with him was a very short term. Well, obviously it backfired because then, so even if you say, well, was it effective? No, it wasn't an effective way of dealing with the problem. It completely backfired. And yeah, I just think it's like how, most civilized people don't agree with capital punishment. someone can do the most terrible things, but you know, a compassionate person knows that just destroying that person for what they've done is not really a solution. You want to try and work out why the person did what they did, maybe try and awaken some kind of regret in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you do their soul no favours by just destroying them.
Interesting. And do you think if Obi-Wan had reached out to Anakin at that point and like force lifted him out of the lava and got him away from it, and then tried to do some force healing or something, and then try and get him back to the ship and take him into medical care, it might have made a difference?
Well, I think if he had rescued him at that point, I don't think they had the same powers that the Emperor did to regenerate and things like that. I think a very likely outcome would have been Anakin would have been touched by compassion, and he might have realised the harm that he'd done.
Yes.
And I think that forgiveness is very powerful in making other people recognise their own fault. You know, if Obi-Wan had forgiven him, it might have touched Anakin's heart enough for him to say, I shouldn't have killed those children, I shouldn't have been following the path I have been, and, you know, turning around. But he also very likely would have died. But either way, you would never have had then the dynamic duo of Darth Vader and the Emperor, which ended up being like the biggest problem in the galaxy.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So I just think Obi-Wan handled everything wrong, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, well, okay, well, that's interesting. Do you think Obi-Wan had much of a choice, though? Like, can you see that why he made the kind of choices he made?
Yeah, I can see why. I mean,
Do you think it was an easier choice for him to make, just to go, well, there's Anakin's dead?
I think he never thought, like most of the Jedi, he always thought Anakin should never have become part of their organisation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think in the back of his mind, he just looked at Anakin as a problem.
Yeah, a bit like Maria in Sound of Music. How do we solve a problem like Anakin?
The convent couldn't wait to get rid of her. Exactly. They knew she wasn't non-material. And the Jedi were like, Anakin is not one of us. And so it's just a shame to me that rather than accepting that and trying to say, look, maybe you're your own force, you know, maybe you're not part of what we are, but go and spread your wings and hopefully you will find yourself in a good way. They just had to destroy him. I just think it was a real shame. And like, no, emotion aside, it was a mistake because they created Darth Vader.
Yeah, but do you think Obi-Wan in the end kind of redeemed himself through his sacrifice in helping Luke, Anakin's son? You know, in such a way by sacrificing himself in the first Star Wars film by just going, well, if you strike me down, you'll only make me more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Well, I think
so he could contact Luke, or do you think that was quite hubris?
I think Obi-Wan found himself in a very fortunate position of being able to masquerade as light once again and pull all the hero moves and do all the I'm Christ on the cross moves that would make him feel good about himself. And I mean, I'm glad he died at peace, let's face it. But I do think it was all lined up for him.
And what about it? Do you think he kind of continued on with his bullshit with how he spoke to Luke about, you know, his father, not telling him the complete truth in a roundabout kind of way about Darth Vader?
Yeah, because I think he kind of groomed Luke there to like see Darth Vader as an enemy.
Yeah.
So that when he was faced with him and told it was his father, he really fought against that idea. Whereas, you know, that was after he'd had all this Jedi bullshit put into his head. If he had been told the truth, your father was a great warrior who turned to the dark side and he still lives today and blah, 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 and just told in a less like a Jedi-centric fashion, Luke could have gone, wow, my father's alive. I really want to meet him. You know, people are saying he's evil, but you know, maybe I just don't understand enough about how this galaxy works.
Yeah.
You know, like
Well, Luke, in the end, made the right decision, didn't he, by not killing his father and throwing down his weapons in front of the Emperor and saying, you know,
yeah.
I know there's good in you.
Mhm.
You know, I'm a Jedi just like my father.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. But I do think once again, yeah, I didn't like how Obi-Wan handled that because I mean, we know he has Jedi mind tricks, and I think he was definitely manipulating the way Luke looked at things,
Mm-hmm.
so that because probably his biggest fear would be, oh, here we have um, another, like we have the son of Anakin, who's probably has a strong force as well. We don't want him and finding his father and siding with him. Like, how damaging would that be to the Jedi? So I think he once again was doing everything he could in the name of being a Jedi.
Is there any kind of clinical kind of diagnosis you'd give to Obi-Wan? Do you think he's, like later on, he's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, but do you think when he's making that decision about leaving Anakin at the side of the lava pit, you'd say he was narcissistic, or how would you describe
I
his
think,
situation?
first of all, you would say he's lacking compassion and empathy, which can be something that happens when you become overly religious. You know, there are people who are strongly religious and they would sacrifice their own children if they thought God was asking them to do that. So it's a similar sort of thing. Like the Jedi is a religion, and he's always going to put that first, and that means that even someone he's known since he was a boy, and has like had a hand in raising and caring for, he can completely turn his back on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the downfalls of religion. It takes away your humanity.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Well, you've been really great, Miss Honey, in telling us about your views on this issue. I think there's some validation in what you're saying, and I feel the same kind of thing. I think the force is strong in you, and I think you've made for a very entertaining kind of analysis of the decision making of Obi-Wan. So,
I think in reality I'm what you'd call I've got a bit of the dark side and the force. I'm balanced, and it's from a balanced position that you can usually see the truth.
Well, I think that's what the whole story was about when
Yeah.
you look at it in that kind of way. That's
I think so
that's
too.
why it's such a brilliant story and a myth for the ages.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Miss
That's
Honey. Thanks for
okay.
contributing to this video with your wisdom.
Thank you for listening to my very strong opinions.
All right, well, fantastic. Well, if you enjoyed that video, sorry about the camera work, but I tried to incorporate all the main characters in Anakin's kind of existence towards the dark side and Obi-Wan. So please subscribe and click the like button. And thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. May the force be with you always.